Okay, so let's talk about the Russian Revolution first. This is Social Studies 6H7a. What were the causes of the Russian Revolution? Well, and the effects. Okay, so here's one cause. The people in Russia were starving. So we call this the Depression, when people are out of work or don't have enough resources, but it was even worse than that. So we're going to say starvation. Number two, Russia was losing World War I, and the soldiers were pretty fed up with it because they weren't getting what they needed, like bullets and guns and stuff. So Russia losing war. The Tsar, or the king, did not seem to care. And that really ticked people off in Russia. So they finally decided to have a revolution. They overthrow the Tsar, and they kill his entire family. Well, when you do that, when you have a revolution and people are just excited about having a new government, that's okay, that's fine. But then you're left with the day after the revolution. Now what do we replace the old government with? Well, there was this guy named Vladimir Lenin, and he thought he knew. And he said, let's replace the old government, the old emperor and empire, with something called, you guessed it, communism. Vladimir Lenin introduces communism to Russia. This is going to have enormous consequences for the rest of the world for the rest of time. This is the birthplace. Even though this is at the end of World War I, World War II hasn't even started. This is really the birthplace or the seeds for the Cold War. Because if this revolution had never happened, we'd have no reason to fight the communists because the communists in the Soviet Union wouldn't have existed. So if you want to know what one effect of the Russian Revolution was, one effect was it brought communism to Russia. Russia renames itself the Soviet Union. And we, the United States, are going to find ourselves involved in a very long, very expensive, very terrifying thing called the Cold War, fighting against the Soviet Union and communism. Although we never fired a bullet in the Cold War, that's why it's called the Cold War, not a hot war. It was very scary. It was a nuclear arms race, okay? And nobody would have ever predicted that in 1917. So the causes are starvation, and the Russian army is losing World War I because the Russian government is not giving them what they need in the way of bullets and arms. And I always say this, desperate people do desperate things. So these desperate people did a desperate thing, and they overthrew the government and replaced it with communism. So you want to know an effect? The effect is Soviet Union and communism. What's the Treaty of Versailles? The Treaty of Versailles, interesting document, written in France. This comes at the end, this officially ends World War I. So you need to write that down. This is notes on the Treaty of Versailles. What is it? Well, first of all, it ends World War I. Second of all, this is the second thing you need to write. It takes Germany's military away from them and says you can no longer have a military. What do you think that did for the German people that were in Germany's military? They didn't like that. The second thing it did, third thing it did, it made Germany take the blame for all of the death and carnage that happened in World War I. And the Germans are looking around going, hey, we're not the only ones that fought this war. We're not responsible for all of this. But the Treaty of Versailles said that they were. The German people didn't like that either. The fourth thing it did is it took Germany's land away from them. It really shrunk the country of Germany. The fifth and probably most important thing that it did to Germany, the Treaty of Versailles, is it made them pay what was called war reparations. Reparations are payments in money to the people that won. And the reparations were so huge that Germany could not, literally could not pay for all of it. And because they had to pay those war reparations, it sent Germany into a depression, a Great Depression, probably 20 years before our depression in this country. So the German people did not like the fact that they were blamed for the war. They had to pay war reparations. Part of their country was taken from them, and their military was taken from them. This is going to lead to something else, and we're going to see in the next video.